Alright, everybody. More disgusting Middle Eastern news. This is from Rupley, and it says, "Shameful U.S. withholds food and medicine from Iranians while claiming to support them," FM Zarif says. Washington's self-professed solidarity with Iranians protesting against rising fuel costs cannot be taken seriously since U.S. sanctions have caused so much suffering in the Islamic Republic, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said. The regime that imposes coercive economic actions and bars delivery of food and drugs to the elderly and patients can never claim that it's supporting the Iranian nation, Zarif noted on Tuesday, according to Iran's semi-official IRNA news agency. He added that the European nations that fail to challenge Washington's regime change posturing against Tehran will be responsible for their dangerous acts. Is anyone really surprised that Trump's maximum pressure nonsense was going to end up biting him on the ass? I'm not surprised, not in the least. It's a messed up thing to do, and eventually people are going to put two and two together and realize, wow, Trump's being a giant douche. Go figure. You cannot simultaneously support a country and be sanctioning their food supply at the same time. Zarif is correct. America is very much a bully state. And that's how they support the ever-growing American empire, through bullying tactics and foreign interventionism. It needs to stop. But his comments were made after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo expressed support for Iranians who have taken to the streets in protest against the rising price of fuel. Are they going to have their own Yellow Vest movement? That would sure be interesting. Zarif suggested that Pompeo first answer for the announced terrorist actions and crimes against humanity against the Iranian nation before professing solidarity with the Iranian people. Washington has imposed tough sanctions on Iran after unilaterally withdrawing from the 2015 nuclear accord last year. Iran has sought to bypass the economic restrictions, but so far European nations have been largely unwilling to defy U.S. dictates. Yeah, largely because they know they'd be in for a hell of a fight if they even tried it. They'd be in for one hell of a fight with the U.S. military. We have some of the best technology and best power in the world, which is why you should be frightened of us. Remember, this is the only country in the history of the world that ever actually used an atomic weapon before. People are always freaking out about Russia, trying to turn them into a boogeyman. Everyone's scared of Russia, when really they need to be scared of us. More than any other government in the world, you need to be scared of the United States government. Because it is shown that it is capable of A, justifying anything, B, doing anything, and C, willing to overlook the criminal behaviors of anyone they actually end up supporting. I.e. the inappropriate behaviors of the modern state of Israel, for example. Or, I don't know, the fact that over in there in the Middle East in the Syrian Civil War, we were literally backing terrorists. This is the only government that I know of, aside from either the European Onion, that you should be absolutely afraid of. The U.S. government. It is something to fear. Absolutely. Trump has made it less interventional and is trying to, crack down on the system. But his maximum pressure campaign still supports the idea of the American empire. Only it's instead of use of military might, it's sanctions and tariffs and all sorts of, undiplomatic bullying. Which, in my opinion, diplomacy is literally the highest political value there is. Let's sit down and let's talk about it like civilized human beings. Is that idea so crazy? It doesn't sound so crazy to me. Doesn't sound crazy to me at all. But that's the way it is, I'm afraid. All hail, God bless the American Empire. Speaking of, within the walls of our own nation, there's a little thing going on right now that I may or may not have heard about. And that is, from Reason, Free Minds, Free Markets, Congress will vote today on continuing a resolution that hikes spending and extends Patriot Act surveillance. Yeah, just defy the Constitution and keep passing illegal laws. Just keep doing it. Oh, and extending ones that already exist. But Representative Justin Amash and some progressive lawmakers are trying to block it. But most Democrats seem happy to hand more spying powers to a president they are investigating for abusing his power. Very interesting. At the same time that Democrats are holding impeachment inquiries to determine if President Donald Trump abused his executive power, they apparently have no qualms about letting him continue to spy on Americans. An abuse of power. While impeachment hearings are getting most of the attention on Capitol Hill today, House Democrats will also hold a vote on a continuing resolution that will postpone a government shutdown, slated for this Thursday. If Congress can't agree on a budget deal until December 20th, included in the short-term budget deal is a provision to fully reauthorize the Patriot Act for an additional 3 months beyond its current sunset at the end of the year, extending it through March 2020. That will postpone any effort to reform or abolish the 9/11-era law that grants the federal government broad surveillance powers, including the ability to collect phone records and online data. Very cool way to resist Trump by ensuring he continues to have terrifying authoritarian surveillance powers, wrote Evan Greer, Deputy Director for Fight for the Future, a digital rights advocacy group on Twitter. Representative Justin Amash introduced an amendment on Monday night that would have removed the Patriot Act reauthorization from the continuing resolution, but the amendment was blocked by Democratic leaders. You know what I actually kind of liked about Obama? The one thing he did, in spite of him being a terrible president, in my opinion, one really good thing he did is they tried to pass something very similar to this under his regime, and he just kind of set it aside. He actually literally set it aside and didn't sign it, because he knew what it meant. Even if 9/11 wasn't an inside job or the conspiracy theory is fake, it's still pretty obvious to me that the 9/11 was used as a precedent to establish a more authoritarian style government within the United States, with the inclusion of things like the TSA, militarized police, and more armored defense than you can imagine. The Patriot Act was also written up in lieu of that horrible, horrible day. So even if the conspiracy isn't true, they still used it anyway. That much I think we can agree upon. But Justin Amash tweets, "I introduced an amendment to strip the Patriot Act extension from the spending bill. It has no business being in there. Just like GOP leaders, Dem leaders ruled my amendment out of order. Neither party protects your rights, even though securing rights is why government exists." The continuing resolution will also boost pay for the military fund next year's census and hike overall spending by about $322 billion, a figure that was agreed to earlier this year, but still seems irresponsible given the rapidly rising deficit and $23 trillion national debt. The 4-week stopgap funding bill also punts on the question of paying for Trump's border wall. That shortcoming might be the best way to stop the reauthorization of the surveillance provisions, since Trump has demanded funding for the border wall in exchange for his signature on a continuing resolution. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has suggested that Trump might veto the bill in an effort to hamstring the ongoing impeachment investigation. The continuing resolution's passage in the House seems assured, but some Democrats are signing their unwillingness to support the bill because of the surveillance issues. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar tweeted that they opposed the Patriot Act's reauthorization. Wow, they actually did something smart for once. Give that woman a candy. Pretty much everyone recognizes that particular act was a bad idea. But progressive groups, including Demand Progress, have also highlighted the Patriot Act reauthorization tweets and emails encouraging opposition to the continuing resolution. While the Democrats may face a small revolt from their left flank, there is little reason to think the passage of the continuing resolution will be in doubt when it is brought to the floor later on Tuesday. Asked about the possible progressive opposition to the spending bill Tuesday, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer told CNN's Haley Beard that the 3-month extension will allow time for lawmakers to deal with the issue legislatively, rather than simply letting the Patriot Act lapse. If there is a silver lining in today's likely reauthorization of mass surveillance of Americans, it could be that Democratic leaders commit to at least considering the possibility of maybe reforming an 18-year-old law that's eroded civil liberties without making Americans much safer. Every representative in Congress should oppose this legislation, Amash tweeted on Monday. It would be a huge surprise if more than a handful of lawmakers do. It's pretty obvious to me that certain events in this nation's history were used as a precedent that would allow the government to create an authoritarian state. And that's the kind of, that is the state we are living in now. They use 9/11 as the precedent to push an authoritarian agenda. That is clear, that is obvious, that is true. You have mass surveillance, you have mass censorship on social media, you have a military budget that is out of control, you have foreign interventionism and violence all across the earth. This is a massive authoritarian empire designed to vaguely resemble a Republican democracy. But it is not a true Republican democracy, because the politicians are allowed to defy their own laws and deny people rights on a regular basis. That is the United States we live under today. Anyway, peace.